But, in reading through the story of Toussaint Louverture, one of the things that really came to mind for me was I was thinking about other revolutionary leaders throughout history, especially within the black struggle. So you have Toussaint Louverture, and, you have the Martin Luther Kings, and you have the Malcolm X, and you have Patrice Lumumba, and you have Kwame Nkrumah, and, you have Nelson Mandela. I mean, you have numerous leaders, Marcus Garvey. I mean, you have numerous leaders throughout, the history that were a part of, the liberation of black people throughout the world, so to speak, throughout Africa, throughout the Caribbean, the Americas. I mean, it was powerful, right? And it was interesting because as I looked through and kind of looked at the backstory of a lot of these revolutionary leaders throughout history, the ones that we revere, that we quote, that we highlight, that we admire, these guys, these men, were men of faith. What's happening, y'all? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now, where we're bringing the village to the brothers. Every couple of weeks, you can look forward to a quick inspirational message or a thought-provoking guest with knowledge and wisdom, all geared towards helping you be the best father that you can be. We're bringing the village to you. Now it's your turn to do something with what you learned. All right, y'all. Let's go. What's going on, fellas? This is Mike D, Mr. Double Down on You. And this is another episode of Black Fathers Now. I hope all you brothers are doing the doggone thing, having a wonderful day. And again, as I always say, making the best or making the most of the situation that you're currently in, right? Making the most of the cards that you've been dealt, learning how to play a great hand with the cards that you've been dealt. Fellas, you got it. You can do it. You can make this happen. All right. Hey, before we get started, I want to encourage everyone to visit blackfathersnow.com and click on the book, Dynamic Black Fatherhood Manifesto. Grab a copy. This is a great stocking stuffer. Fellas, grab a copy. Ladies listening, grab copies for all the men in your life. Dynamic Black Fatherhood Manifesto. You can grab it by visiting blackfathersnow.com and just clicking the image of the book. You can also click the podcast link there and make sure that you are subscribed, right? You can subscribe to the email list in which I send out emails and updates on things that are going on in regards to Black Fathers Now. Click on that. And actually, there's also a link for apparel. Now, by the time this actual episode releases, there won't be time for the fulfillment to happen by Christmas, because that deadline is Friday the 13th, which is this past Friday. But you can still order apparel. And again, the store is going to be open. So whether you're getting stuff for Christmas or, for over the holiday season or for any time, definitely click on the apparel link and grab some dope apparel that celebrates the nuances of the black family. Again, all of this is accessible through blackfathersnow.com. So, but yo, today I wanted to jump into something, man, and it's a revelation that I came across that was quite interesting. And, I'm reading this really, really awesome book, and I'm taking my time through it, right? Only a couple of pages here or there, highlighting, processing, taking notes, and just thinking about it, right? Letting the story kind of sit on my spirit. But it's called The Black Jacobins, right? And it, in essence, is the history of the Haitian Revolution and the story of Toussaint Louverture, right? The Haitian Revolution. I mean, it's powerful, powerful, powerful story. And I'm learning so much about this individual, man. This brother was powerful. Like, coming from where he came from, in a sense of being, formerly enslaved, but yet, he educated himself, and then he became astute in politics and understanding economics and understanding leadership. And, and the thing that was also interesting about it, he came into prominence not as a young man. He didn't come into prominence until he was in his 40s. So they kind of referred to him as the old guy, right? But at the end of the day, he led the first successful revolution that led to the first independent, black nation in the Western Hemisphere, I mean, it's crazy. Like he did that. And but it's a powerful story. It's called The Black Jacobins. I highly recommend any and everyone to check it out. It's by C.L.R. James. It was written a long time ago, but man, it's a page turner. Surprised they haven't done a movie on it. But anyway, that's a different conversation. But, you know, in reading through the story of Toussaint Louverture, one of the things that really came to mind for me was I was thinking about other revolutionary leaders throughout history, especially within the black struggle. So you have Toussaint Louverture, and, you know, you have the Martin Luther Kings, and you have the Malcolm X, and you have Patrice Lumumba, and you have Kwame Nkrumah, and, you know, you have Nelson Mandela. I mean, you have numerous leaders, Marcus Garvey. I mean, you have numerous leaders throughout, you know, the history that were a part of, you know, the liberation of black people throughout the world, so to speak, throughout Africa, throughout the Caribbean, the Americas. I mean, it was powerful, right? And it was interesting because as I looked through and kind of looked at the backstory of a lot of these revolutionary leaders throughout history, the ones that we revere, that we quote, that we, you know, that we highlight, that we admire, these guys, these men were men of faith. It was interesting. Like when I looked at the backstory, Toussaint Louverture, he was a Catholic. Marcus Garvey was a Christian. They mentioned that Nelson Mandela, he didn't talk a lot publicly about his religious beliefs, but I read through somewhere that, you know, those close to him, you know, knew that he espoused, you know, a connection to Christianity. And I think his funeral was something, you know, in the Christian realm. And Patrice Lumumba was raised Catholic. And, you know, when Kwame Nkrumah with Ghana, you know, he was a Christian. You have, you know, obviously Martin Luther King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, you know, he was a Christian. You have Malcolm X, you know, he was a Muslim. I mean, Marcus Garvey was a Christian. I mean, you look at these things and you see that a lot of these leaders had some level of faith or some level of faith backing, you know, in their history, right? But what was also interesting about these leaders, these revolutionary leaders, is that they did not beat people over the head with their religious beliefs. They were men of faith. They had religious beliefs on a personal level, but they did not beat people over the head with their religious beliefs. And I don't know why, again, I'm dropping this as it's coming to me. And one of the things that really spoke to me was the whole notion of how do we utilize our faith? How do we utilize our belief? Now, honestly, I understand that there are brothers that have various belief structures across the board. I mean, I've been very open with, you know, my belief structure. You know, I'm a Christian, right? That's where I come from. But I'm also not naive to the fact that there are brothers who have various spiritual beliefs that might not necessarily align with mine. And I understand that, right? That's you know, you have the freedom to adopt your own spiritual practices and your belief structure and all. But what was interesting across the board, when I look at these revolutionary leaders, just about all of them had some level of faith-based practice or some type of religious belief, you know, within them. But they did not beat people over the head with their religious belief. That was interesting. How did they utilize that? And this is just my personal analysis. They utilize their belief structure as the wind beneath their wings. They utilize that to build their confidence, to allow them to have the courage to move forward with this thing that they were called to do, you know, in regards to, you know, the liberation of their people. They utilized it as that engine, as that fuel, but they did not beat people over the head with it. It's interesting. Like, I mean, I don't know why this thing came to me all of a sudden, but I was like, it just made me say, wow. And it makes me think about how we utilize our faith to do big things. How do we utilize our faith to do big things? And again, my faith does not have to be the same faith as yours, but we can still go and do big things. But what limits us being able to do big things is if I take my faith and I'm beating you over the head with it. And so again, when you go back and you think about these great leaders, these guys that we revere, again, the Marcus Garvey, the Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, Nelson Mandela, the Martin Luther King, the Malcolm X, the Toussaint Louverture. I mean, these were men of faith. But they did not beat people over the head with their belief structure. They did not beat people over the head with their religious beliefs. They did not beat people over the head with what they believed. They just utilized what they believed as the fuel for them to go forward. They utilized that to build the courage for them to go forward. And I think there's a lesson that as Black fathers we can take as we go forward. We're charged with leading our families and, being the head of our household and helping to direct, our families in the right direction so that they can go and be the best versions of themselves. And for a lot of us that have, spiritual beliefs and have a basis of faith in our life, we need to utilize that as fuel, but we have to be careful not to beat people over the head with it, because that can be a turnoff to others, especially if they don't necessarily share the same belief structure that you have. And again, that's also saying that you should hide who you are. That does not mean that you should hide or deny your faith, but it's a difference between hiding and denying versus, going to the other extreme of beating people over the head with it. There's a difference there. But again, to me, when I think about faith, it's my personal walk. It's my personal journey. It's about me being directly connected to my Creator and, being able to utilize that as the fuel and the wind beneath my wings as I go forward. But it's also, I have to be mindful of making sure to not beat people over the head with what works for me. And it's a challenge at times. As a father, you're charged with leading, right? And so are you leading or are you just being a boss? I think the boss mentality is telling people what they're supposed to do. They better do it or else. Leading is allowing what's inside of you to come out in a way that it serves as an example for others to see what the possibilities are. Now, granted, you do need to communicate. And at times, especially with your family, you do need to make some things that are non-negotiable because, kids don't always know what they need to know, at certain ages. Biologically, their prefrontal lobe is not fully developed until their early 20s. So they're not all the way there yet. But at the end of the day, we have to be mindful not to beat them, even our kids, over the head with our belief structure. We need to figure out a way to show them what it looks like so that we serve as an example. And then we can truly be leaders, because as a leader, you show by your example and then others follow. Like the revolutionary leaders that I mentioned before, every last one of them, they showed by how they operated. They showed by how they conducted themselves. They showed by how they communicated. They actually were the ones carrying out the actions and others followed them. They didn't simply stand at a podium, point, and tell people to do things. That's being a boss. We're talking about being leaders. And as Black fathers, in our household, we have to be leaders. But real talk, in society, we have to be leaders. But to be a leader, you lead by example. You're not necessarily beating someone over the head with an ideology and expecting them to follow. Show them what that looks like. And again, this is just a revelation that came to me in reading the Black Jacobins, the story of Toussaint Louverture. And you understand how he operated. But I always think about why. What is that thing? What is that engine? What is that core that allows you to stay steady in this long journey, this fight, this struggle? And for Toussaint, as well as a lot of the aforementioned brothers that I just spoke about, they had faith at the center of who they were. Again, they might have had some different faiths, but there was faith nonetheless. There was some belief in something bigger than them at the core of who they were. But they did not take that faith and beat it over the head of others. They simply used that to serve as an example to others, and then others were willing to follow. Pay attention to that. Let's be leaders, fellas. Let's use that belief structure. Let's use that faith. Let's use that spirit that's inside of us to go and do and be the leaders. but let's also be mindful of not beating people over the head with what's inside of us. Just show them what the potential is. And that leadership skill there that you have, that thing that's inside of you that's driving you, they're going to follow. You just got to be patient. I heard a quote a long time ago. It said, more dreams are killed by impatience than failure. We just got to be patient and allow this thing to play out. But that faith that's inside of you, use it. Because a lot of the great leaders that came before you had faith at the core of who they were as well. All right, fellas. Well, hey, as always, visit blackfathersnow.com. Subscribe via all the different social media platforms, all the different podcast listening platforms, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, anywhere you listen to it. Share, subscribe. Leave some ratings. Please leave ratings. Leave some ratings. Leave some comments. That helps us to grow in the rankings. And, as always, follow on social media, Black Fathers Now on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And, until next time, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. And I'll holler at you. Peace.
Yo, fellas, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And always visit blackfathersnow.com, as well as follow Black Fathers Now on virtually every social media platform you can think of. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. Just follow us and engage with us, man. Look forward to hearing from you. And I guess until next time, I'll holler at you. Peace.